The warm sunlight cascaded down from the sky, illuminating the vast mountain range. Underneath the rays of light, faint sounds of commotion could be heard. If one looked closely, they would see a large contingent of people moving swiftly through the mountains, advancing deeper into the range. This sizable group was none other than the forces from Yang City. After a night of fierce battles against the demonic beast Tide, their numbers had dwindled significantly. However, the remaining dynasties still possessed considerable strength, so their momentum remained formidable. Lin Dong and his team were also among them, though they chose not to lead the way. Instead, they opted for the safest middle position, closely following the main group from behind. As the large group pressed on, despite enduring the demonic beast onslaught the previous night, the deeper they ventured into the Thunder Rock mountain range, the more formidable the demonic beasts they encountered became. Thus, the journey proved far from as easy as anticipated, with beasts constantly emerging from all directions, causing significant trouble. Lin Dong rode on the back of Little Yin, surrounded by Mo Tai and others, who treated him like the center of the universe. The once arrogant warriors of the Iron Dynasty now looked at him with a profound sense of awe and admiration, completely subdued by his actions the previous night. Brother Lin Dong, at our current pace, we should reach Thunder Rock Valley by afternoon, Mo Tai said with a hearty laugh, his face brimming with joy. Along the way, many envious glances were cast their way, seemingly admiring them for finding such a powerful ally. Mo Tai clearly relished these looks, especially since some came from dynasties with whom he had minor grudges. Lin Dong nodded, but his gaze wasn't fixed ahead. Instead, he discreetly scanned the distant rear. The unexpected discovery of a mysterious force last night made him realize that the journey to Thunder Rock Valley would not be a peaceful one. Although Yang City's forces were numerous, they were like loose sand, disorganized and unable to form a cohesive front. Of course, this was something many understood, not just Lin Dong. However, understanding it was one thing. Finding a way to resolve it was another. Yang City housed many dynasties. While there were no truly high-ranking dynasties among them, there were quite a few mid-ranking ones. Each of them had its own geniuses who were unlikely to submit to another's command easily. Even the Lingyun dynasty and the Great Yuan dynasty couldn't manage such a feat. If this disorganized force encountered a truly powerful dynasty, the outcome would likely be a one-sided slaughter. A single appearance of a Nirvana stage expert from the opposing side could be enough to scare many dynasties into retreating. Lin Dong's ambition to seize the heavenly talisman tree and the ancient key under the watchful eyes of many powerful forces was no simple task. This treasure won't be easy to snatch, Lin Dong murmured to himself, glancing at the sky and sighing softly. As Yang City's forces hastened towards Thunder Rock Valley, far behind them, another large contingent quietly advanced. Unlike the chaotic formation of Yang City's troops, this group moved with a well-practiced harmony, indicating rigorous training and discipline, a stark contrast. In the center of this group stood a man in black, hands clasped behind his back, his black hair flowing freely, exuding a carefree aura. He seemed to float across the ground, as if riding the wind. Had Lin Dong been present, he would have recognized this man as the Nirvana stage expert he had spotted the previous night. Clearly, their destination was also Thunder Rock Valley. Senior brother, we've spotted traces of the Xianbing dynasty. A figure suddenly appeared beside the man in black, reporting respectfully as their group swiftly moved forward. So, they've come too? The man in black raised an eyebrow slightly, then smiled faintly. These guys seem determined to go against us, huh? With all the dynasties busy searching for treasures in this ancient battleground, these guys have been trailing us for quite some time. The last treasure we found, they even took a share of it. It's really frustrating, someone beside the man in black complained. Senior brother, should we try to hinder them? Another asked. No need. The struggle for Thunder Rock Valley, this time, isn't small. Although Yang City's forces are disorganized, they do have some combat strength. There are also some formidable experts from the Lingyun and Great Yuan dynasties among them. Relying on just this might not be enough to intimidate everyone. We may need to temporarily join forces with the Xianbing dynasty to drive out Yang City's forces first before we can peacefully search for treasures, the man in black responded calmly. Among the forces from Yang City, only Ling Ji from the Lingyun dynasty and Lu Yuan from the Great Yuan dynasty are worth noting. The rest are not worth mentioning, the man in black stated calmly. Being cautious is never wrong. Who knows if there might be some hidden experts among them? Let's take a detour from another direction and reach Thunder Rock Valley before they do, he continued. As soon as he finished speaking, he stopped talking and waved his arm. The group's speed suddenly increased, and those around him quickly followed suit. Not long after their contingent passed, a large tree nearby subtly trembled. A graceful figure suddenly emerged, her charming eyes lazily looking ahead. Her red lips curved into a faint smile as she chuckled softly. How interesting. I never expected an ancient key to appear here as well. As the main force advanced, the Thunder Rock Mountain range seemed to be on the verge of being turned upside down. Many demonic beasts were startled and emerged, causing considerable trouble for the Yang City forces. However, as time went by, they ventured deeper into the Thunder Rock Mountain range. Especially as the sun began to set, the densely packed troops gradually slowed their pace. One by one, their eyes, filled with a mix of excitement and greed, were fixed on the front of a mountain pass. Beyond that pass lay a series of steep, towering peaks, reaching thousands of feet high and piercing the clouds. Between these peaks, a massive fissure opened up from which dense mist spread out. From within that mist, the faint sound of thunder could be heard, adding an air of mystery. The valley formed by this fissure was none other than the Thunder Rock Valley, the destination of Lin Dong and his group, where the ancient key was rumored to be hidden. Seeing Thunder Rock Valley finally appear before them, the people who had struggled so hard to reach this point erupted in cheers, their excitement palpable. Sitting on the back of the tiger, Lin Dong's expression remained calm, for he knew that the real battle for the key had only just begun now that they had reached Thunder Rock Valley. The real challenges were likely still ahead. His gaze slowly scanned the surrounding treacherous peaks. After a moment, his eyes narrowed slightly as he seemed to sense some fluctuation in the air. We'll go from the back. Lin Dong turned his head and whispered to Mo Tai and the others, who were also eager to make their move. Hearing his words, Mo Tai and the others were clearly taken aback. They exchanged glances, but ultimately nodded in agreement, trusting Lin Dong's judgment based on his strength. The jubilant troops from Yang City were now rushing out of the pass, their faces filled with excitement as they charged toward Thunder Rock Valley. To them, as long as they could get inside, they were certain to get a share of the treasures. All the hardships of the journey would finally pay off. At the forefront of this large group were the Lingyun and Great Yuan dynasties. No one dared to question their position at the lead, given their undeniable strength. Lin Dong and his group moved at the rear. As they got closer to Thunder Rock Valley, Lin Dong's frown deepened. The fluctuations he sensed became increasingly apparent. Charge in! The leading group had already reached a few hundred feet from Thunder Rock Valley. However, just as excitement surged on the faces of Ling Ji and Lu Yuan at the front, Lin Dong's pupils suddenly contracted sharply from behind. At that very moment, a sudden explosion tore through the air above. A massive 100-foot-long cold light descended with astonishing speed, striking violently just dozens of feet ahead of Yang City's forces. The ground shook, and a massive crack, 100 feet wide, was forcibly torn open. The sudden turn of events was like a bolt of lightning, causing an uproar among the Yang City troops. At the very front, Ling Ji and Lu Yuan's eyes contracted upon seeing the huge chasm, and their faces turned grim. Who dares to obstruct us? Show yourself! Ling Ji shouted, his voice filled with authority as he looked up. Return to where you came from. This place is not meant for the likes of you. As soon as Ling Ji's shout fell silent, a voice slowly echoed across the sky. With the arrival of this voice, the temperature seemed to drop subtly. Soon after, everyone saw a figure approaching, treading lightly on the wind, finally appearing within everyone's view. The figure stood on the wind, without deliberately unleashing any aura, yet an unsettling presence quietly radiated from them. Nirvana stage. Sensing the powerful aura, both Ling Ji and Lu Yuan's expressions darkened instantly. A solitary figure hovered quietly in midair, surrounded by a chilling aura. It seemed to lower the temperature of the very air around it. This terrifying energy, far surpassing the half-step Nirvana stage, caused everyone's faces to change dramatically. They knew that only those who had truly stepped into the Nirvana stage could possess such an overwhelming presence. At the forefront of the Yang City forces, Lu Yuan and Ling Ji glared at the figure enveloped in cold air, their expressions grim. The very situation they dreaded most had come to pass. This battle for the ancient key had indeed attracted some troublesome individuals. May I know which dynasty this friend hails from? Thunder Rock Valley is unclaimed territory, and we from Yang City have traveled a long way to get here. Isn't your behavior a bit excessive? Lu Yuan was the first to speak. The Great Yuan dynasty, though having declined, was once among the high-ranking dynasties, and some pride remained in his heart. Therefore, upon hearing the expelling tone from that figure, he couldn't help but speak out. The Xianbing dynasty, Hua Yun. I assume you've heard of us, the figure replied with a faint smile. Xianbing dynasty? A commotion erupted among the Yang City forces. Many eyes were filled with deep fear. Clearly, they had heard of this particularly powerful high-ranking dynasty. What rotten luck! A high-ranking dynasty has indeed set its sights on this place. Mo Tai muttered resentfully, watching the scene unfold with a gloomy expression. Around him, Tang Xian and others also looked despondent. If it had only been a force like the Great Yuan dynasty, they might have hoped to gain something here, even if they couldn't secure the best treasures. But facing a high-ranking dynasty, they might end up with nothing. After all, the gap between these mid-ranking dynasties and a high-ranking one was significant. The presence of a Nirvana stage expert alone was enough to crush any ambitions they had. Lin Dong's brows furrowed slightly at this moment because he knew the group he saw last night wasn't from the so-called Xianbing dynasty. This meant that from what he knew, there were at least 2 high-ranking dynasties eyeing Thunder Rock Valley. Moreover, these were just the ones openly revealed. No one could be sure if there were other mysterious dynasties and formidable individuals hidden among the many treacherous peaks surrounding Thunder Rock Valley. It seems the allure of the ancient key is indeed powerful. At the very front, Lu Yuan and Ling Ji exchanged glances, both sensing a tricky situation. They had certainly heard of the Xianbing dynasty, a genuine high-ranking dynasty with a true Nirvana stage expert among them, much stronger than those like them who were still a step away. You must be Lu Yuan from the Great Yuan dynasty? If you had already advanced to the Nirvana stage, perhaps you'd have the right to speak to me like this. Furthermore, your Great Yuan dynasty has participated in the 100 Dynasty War before. You should know the rules of this land. Treasures are not for the fated, but for the strong. Hua Yun and Midair looked down at the Yang City forces. Despite their numbers, they were oppressed by his sheer aura, making it difficult for them even to breathe. He clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze, cold and filled with endless frost, fixed on Lu Yuan. Hearing this, Lu Yuan's fists clenched involuntarily inside his sleeves. Even if you have a high-ranking dynasty backing you, my friend, if the forces of Yang City unite, I doubt you'd be able to withstand us, Ling Ji said in a deep voice. Although he knew that the forces from Yang City were disjointed, at this moment, he could only try to bluff his way through. Hua Yun, however, seemed to find this amusing. He waved his hand, and immediately, the sound of rushing wind came from behind him. A large group of white-robed figures swiftly appeared behind him, emanating powerful and chilling Yuan power waves. The icy wind swept through the area outside Thunder Rock Valley, making many among the Yang City forces feel as if they were plunged into an ice cellar. Looking at the formidable lineup of the Xianbing dynasty, both Lu Yuan and Ling Ji's eyes narrowed. From the auras they sensed, there were at least 10 individuals who had reached the half-step Nirvana stage, each with a robust foundation. Just by making an appearance, the strength of the high-ranking dynasty was evident. None of the forces from Yang City, could compare to them. Seeing the Xianbing dynasty's imposing presence, some members of the Yang city forces began to look apprehensive, which made Lin Dong sigh inwardly. Indeed, they were like a pile of loose sand. While they might not match up to the Xianbing dynasty individually, if they truly united, even the Xianbing dynasty would have a headache and might have to make compromises. Everyone, a high-ranking dynasty may be powerful, but how long have we from Yang City been planning for this Thunder Rock Valley? How many brothers and comrades have we lost, battling through demonic beast tides along the way? Now, when we're on the verge of entering Thunder Rock Valley, are you willing to be cowards and give up? Lu Yuan had clearly noticed the unrest among the troops. He abruptly turned around, his voice thundering like a clap of thunder in everyone's ears. He knew well that if the Yang City forces scattered now, they would completely lose their chance to stand against a high-ranking dynasty. You are all formidable warriors from various dynasties. The path of cultivation is also a test of will. The weak can never become true powerhouses. Hearing Lu Yuan's rallying cry, even Lin Dong couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. It was evident he hadn't expected someone who looked as brutish as an ape to be capable of such stirring words. Evidently, Lu Yuan's words had their desired effect. At the very least, the panicked individuals gradually ceased their commotion, their eyes flickering with renewed resolve. In the sky, Huayan saw this, and his eyes narrowed slightly. No matter what, our Yang City forces are far more numerous than theirs. If you're worried about the Nirvana stage expert, then when the time comes, Ling Ji and I will join forces to hold him back. Surely, with so many of you, you can't be afraid of them? Lu Yuan pressed on, seizing the momentum. He knew that Hua Yun was the one everyone feared most, so he stepped up to the plate, suggesting he and Ling Ji could keep Hua Yun occupied. Both of them were warriors on the verge of entering the Nirvana stage, and together, they might be able to entangle Hua Yun. These words were like a heavy stone, finally settling the hearts of the Yang City troops. The hesitant glances among them gradually turned to resolute determination. Right? We have the numbers. We don't have to fear them. We lost over 10 comrades just to get here. There's no way we're turning back now. If they try to block us, we'll fight them head on. Seeing the rising fervor among the Yang City forces, Lu Yuan and Ling Ji breathed a sigh of relief. They then turned their gaze to Hua Yun and said in a deep voice, Hua Yun, your Xianbing dynasty may be powerful, but must you act so domineering? Lu Yuan, do you really think that by rallying this ragtag bunch from Yang City, you can stand against me? Hua Yun chuckled lightly, a hint of mockery in his gaze. He then said calmly, Wu Mo, how much longer are you going to wait? Ha! Hua Yun, I told you the Xianbing dynasty alone wouldn't be enough to intimidate them. Just as Hua Yun's voice faded, a burst of laughter came from a cloud-shrouded peak in the distance. Then, with a flurry of rushing wind, a large group of black-clad figures swiftly appeared in front of Thunder Rock Valley. The sight that caused the faces of the Yang City troops to change dramatically was that another black-clad figure appeared, moving as if on the wind, finally coming to stand alongside Hua Yun. A similarly overwhelming aura spread out, causing many faces to turn pale. Another high-ranking dynasty, another Nirvana stage expert, the Great Wu Dynasty, Wu Mo. Seeing yet another powerful dynasty and its expert appear, even Lu Yuan and Ling Ji's faces revealed a hint of bitterness. They might be able to stall one Nirvana stage expert, but against two, they were utterly powerless. Lin Dong stared at the newly arrived black-clad man and sighed inwardly. As expected, they had arrived. This group was indeed the one he had seen the previous night. Lu Yuan, now what do you have to say? Will you leave? Or shall we have a little contest? Hua Yun looked at Lu Yuan and Ling Ji with a faint smile. Two high-ranking dynasties were exerting pressure. Even if the Yang City forces managed to unite, it would be difficult to resist. After all, the intimidation brought by two Nirvana stage experts was overwhelming. The Yang City forces fell into silence. The courage that had just been stirred up began to fracture again with the appearance of the Great Wu Dynasty. It wasn't that they lacked bravery. It was simply that the enemy's strength was overwhelmingly formidable. At the front, Ling Ji's expression was uncertain. He glanced at Lu Yuan and whispered, "What should we do?" Lu Yuan was at a loss for words. After a moment, he finally replied, "If there were someone who could hold off one of the Nirvana stage experts, then perhaps we could fight." Upon hearing this, Ling Ji couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Among the Yang City forces, he and Lu Yuan were the strongest, and even they would need to join forces to hold off a single Nirvana stage expert. Who else here could possibly have that capability? Lu Yuan was silent for a moment. For some reason, his gaze suddenly turned towards the back, sweeping over the crowd and finally landing on a young figure in the rear. Ling Ji, noticing Lu Yuan's actions, was momentarily stunned. Following his gaze, he looked toward the figure and couldn't help but say, "Do you really think we can rely on him?" Lu Yuan didn't respond. He was out of options, like a desperate person grasping at straws. As the current temporary leaders of the Yang City forces, their focus immediately drew the attention of many others. Even Hua Yun and Wu Mo, hovering in midair, followed the direction of those countless gazes, their eyes narrowing slightly when they settled on the young figure. For a moment, it was as if the very air had frozen. Outside Thunder Rock Valley, the air seemed thick and heavy. The shifting gazes across the sky, as if contagious, eventually all converged on the young figure at the rear of the Yang City forces. Some of the Yang City troops were aware of the previous night's battle. Lin Dong, having defeated a half-step Nirvana expert with his peak creation stage power, had indeed left them somewhat awed. However, in the current situation, merely having the ability to slay a half-step Nirvana expert was still insufficient. Therefore, seeing Lu Yuan and Ling Ji cast their gaze upon Lin Dong caused some murmurings of doubt among many. They did not doubt Lin Dong's formidable strength, but in their minds, it was far from enough to challenge a true Nirvana stage expert. In the distance, hovering in midair, Hua Yun and Wu Mo were also somewhat puzzled as they looked at the figure. Then, their brows furrowed slightly, as they sensed Lin Dong's power was only at the peak of the creation stage. They were unsure of Lu Yuan and Ling Ji's intentions. Did they think this peak creation stage cultivator could help? What are these guys up to? Hua Yin squinted his eyes, a faint hint of mockery in his murmured voice. Wu Mo, on the other hand, had his brows furrowed. For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity about that figure, but he couldn't quite place where that feeling came from. On a concealed mountain peak surrounding Thunder Rock Valley, a graceful figure appeared. Her lazy, beautiful eyes observed the standoff outside Thunder Rock Valley, then shifted her gaze to the young figure in the back. She softly muttered, "Interesting." Amidst the Yang City forces, Lin Dong, the unintentional center of this sudden development, was visibly taken aback by the unexpected attention. He frowned slightly as he noticed the myriad of eyes fixed on him, then looked up towards Lu Yuan and Ling Ji at the front. "Brother Lin Dong, we are all from Yang City. At this moment, if we could join forces, perhaps we could reap some benefits." Noticing Lin Dong's gaze, Lu Yuan inwardly sighed bitterly. His earlier action had been purely reflexive. He had always felt that Lin Dong was hiding his true strength. So, in his moment of desperation, he had instinctively turned his attention to Lin Dong. But as he came to his senses, he realized just how dire the current situation was. Facing the crushing pressure from two high-ranking dynasties, even if Lin Dong had some skills, could he really turn the tide? Of course, despite the bitter smile in his heart, Lu Yuan had already made his move and could only continue speaking. Ling Ji's expression turned somewhat peculiar at Lu Yuan's words. Did he really think that if Lin Dong stepped forward, the two high-ranking dynasties would retreat? Lin Dong remained silent, his gaze sweeping over the two dynasties, one black, one white, both exerting immense pressure from afar. The sheer lineup attracted to Thunder Rock Valley this time was beyond his expectations. The pressure from these two high-ranking dynasties was so intense that even Lin Dong felt the weight on his shoulders. He knew very well that if these two dynasties decided to target him, it would be exceptionally challenging for him. He understood that the ultimate goal of these two dynasties was undoubtedly the ancient key. So, Even if he remained silent now, they would inevitably clash during the struggle for the ancient key. However, if he chose to stand by and watch the Yang City forces be scared away by these two dynasties, he would have to face these two behemoths alone in the battle for the ancient key inside Thunder Rock Valley. That would indeed be quite a tricky situation. Therefore, if he could get the Yang City forces to enter Thunder Rock Valley, even if it caused some chaos, it would still serve to distract the two dynasties. For Lin Dong, that wouldn't be a bad thing. As Lin Dong remained silent, Mo Tai and the others around him looked at him with curious eyes. Unknowingly, Lin Dong had gradually become a pivotal figure among the Yang City forces, even enough to compare with figures like Lu Yuan. Many gazes were focused on Lin Dong. No one here wanted to leave empty-handed, but under the pressure of the two dynasties, they felt they had no choice. Thus, many were like gamblers, placing their final hopes on Lin Dong. It seemed they were hoping for a second miracle like the one that happened last night. The tense atmosphere persisted for several minutes before Lin Dong's furrowed brows finally relaxed. Then, with a light tap of his toe on the tiger's back, his figure shot forward, appearing at the forefront. Lin Dong's sudden move undeniably stirred up a commotion among the Yang City forces. Many wore complex expressions. On the one hand, they hoped for a miracle, yet their rational minds reminded them that even if Lin Dong did step forward, it might not change this harsh reality. Do you trust me? Lin Dong turned his head slightly, looking at Lu Yuan and Ling Ji as he suddenly asked. Hearing this, the two were momentarily stunned. They exchanged a glance and then cautiously asked, "What do you plan to do?" "Take a gamble. I have a 50% chance of success," Lin Dong said calmly, not revealing too much. 50%. Though they didn't know what kind of gamble Lin Dong was referring to, a 50% chance sounded quite good to Lu Yuan and Ling Ji. After all, if this continued and the two high-ranking dynasties decided to act, they might really collapse. "We've come this far, brother Lin Dong. If you have an idea, then give it a try?" Lu Yuan fell silent for a moment before finally gritting his teeth and speaking in a low voice. There was no point in dragging this out. Otherwise, when night fell, they might not even be able to retreat easily. Beside him, Ling Ji could only nod in agreement. Seeing them nod, Lin Dong exhaled softly. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the two figures hovering in the distance. Even from so far away, he could feel the immense pressure emanating from them. Nirvana stage experts truly lived up to their reputation. Both of you are renowned figures. If you want the Yang City forces to turn around and leave, that's not impossible. However, I'd like to propose a wager. Lin Dong's steady voice slowly spread across the sky. A wager? It seems you aren't quite qualified for that. Hua Yun smiled faintly. Indeed, the combined strength of two high-ranking dynasties is formidable. But believe me, a cornered dog will jump over a wall, and a desperate rabbit will bite. We fought tooth and nail to get here. And if you force us, even if you win, it will come at a cost. Thunder Rock Valley attracted you here, but who knows if other dynasties are hidden in the surrounding mountains. If you suffer losses here, it might not bode well for you. Lin Dong's voice remained calm, as if he didn't feel the pressure emanating from Hua Yun at all. Upon hearing this, Hua Yun and Wu Mo's eyes narrowed slightly. Their gazes subtly swept over the misty mountains surrounding Thunder Rock Valley. What Lin Dong mentioned was indeed their biggest concern. The idea of the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, was unappealing to anyone, including Hua Yun and his group. Let's hear about this wager then. Hua Yun and Wu Mo exchanged glances, a slight glimmer of interest finally appearing in their eyes as they lazily replied. Hearing the two show some flexibility, a slight smile appeared at the corner of Lin Dong's mouth. Then, with a wave of his sleeve, a gust of wind swept out, carving a circular mark about 10 meters in diameter on the distant ground. "My wager is simple," Lin Dong began, his tone casual. "One of you two can step forward and stand within this circle to take one of my attacks. If you are pushed out of the circle, I win. If not, you win." Lin Dong clapped his hands, his tone light, but the impact of his words was like a tidal wave. As soon as he finished speaking, There were audible gasps from the Yang city forces, and all eyes seemed to lose focus in shock, looking dazed and incredulous. It was almost absurd to imagine a cultivator at the peak of the creation stage telling a true Nirvana stage expert, "If you can take one of my moves, you win." The scene was both ridiculous and laughable. They couldn't deny Lin Dong's strength shown last night, but this was far from giving him the right to be so arrogant. That was a genuine Nirvana stage expert. Even figures like Lu Yuan and Ling Ji had to join forces just to barely hold their own. Amid the uproar, Lu Yuan and Ling Ji were equally dumbfounded. Upon hearing Lin Dong's words, their first thought was, "Is this guy playing a prank?" Ling Ji's eyes darkened, his face looking a bit grim. He stared at Lu Yuan, but after a long moment, he couldn't utter a single word. "Well, he said it. Let's see how he plays this out," Lu Yuan could only say, bracing himself. After all, it was he who had indirectly caused the situation. Now, all he could do was hope for a miracle. Interesting. In midair, Hua Yun and Wu Mo were also stunned for a moment before they snapped back to reality. Their eyes swept over Lin Dong with a mocking gaze, and they couldn't help but chuckle and shake their heads. This wager seemed utterly laughable to them. "So, have you two decided who's stepping up?" Lin Dong asked softly, seemingly unaffected by the skeptical gazes surrounding him, his eyes still fixed on Hua Yun and Wu Mo. "I'll go," Hua Yun replied, his face full of amusement. He glanced at Wu Mo, and seeing the latter shrug, he slowly stepped forward. However, he did not enter the circle. Instead, he hovered in midair, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice calm but dripping with unhidden arrogance. "There's no need for me to enter that circle. I'll stand right here. If you can push me back with a single move today, then Thunder Rock Valley will be yours to enter and leave as you please, Yang City forces. But if you fail to do so, you must immediately leave with your people. Otherwise, our two dynasties will take forceful measures. Consider this carefully."